The nuns believe they have a personal and direct relationship with God, and they're clearly unconcerned by the lack of any scientific evidence of his existence. There's a long tradition in all religions of the devout claiming to have had direct communication with God. Often these claims were met with derision, even persecution, and sometimes labelled as a form of madness. Some argue that paying respect to established religions can mean turning a blind eye to irrational, illogical, and sometimes dangerous beliefs. Former MP and newspaper columnist Matthew Parris is proud to call himself an atheist.
I don't have a lot of doubt anymore. I think it's a mistake, religion. I think that God doesn't exist. I am not absolutely 100% certain of that, any more than I'm not absolutely 100% certain that there isn't an elephant in the next room. There may be, but I think it's highly unlikely. Of course, I know lots of very nice Christians, and their Christianity doesn't make me angry at all, but I get irritated with laziness of mind, with bad arguments, and with a reaching for the comfort of something that in some part of their brain they must know is unprovable and perhaps not true.
And yet we know that every society throughout history has believed in a deity of some kind. Maybe it's part of the human condition. Maybe it's normal for us to have some kind of religious faith or spiritual belief. But in the modern world, there can be a fine and sometimes treacherous line between believing you're hearing the voice of God and telling others that you hear voices. It's been said that if you speak to God, it's prayer, but if God speaks back, you're a schizophrenic.
Just one of the voices.
Can you tell us anything about any of the others?
The other voices are around, and they're at the back of me, and they're outside of me, and they swear at me the whole time. They're really unpleasant.
Do you know who they are?
No, I don't know who they are, and when I turn around, there's nobody there.
The University of Manchester is running a unique research programme which directly challenges our usual understanding of madness. All the people in this room hear voices in their head, and they've all been previously diagnosed and treated as mentally ill.
Have you been, Kate?
Not so good. I keep thinking the window's going to fall in. Voices are just telling me it's going to fall in. It's going to, that a spaceship's going to come in because my voices are aliens.
But what if we decide to stop thinking that those who hear voices are mad, but instead are unhappy people who've had bad experiences and who need to be listened to, not labelled and feared?
We all have an inner voice. I mean, this is a perfectly normal aspect of a human mind, and actually it's well understood by psychologists, and its development in childhood has been mapped out in a great deal of detail. What happens is that when we're about sort of 2.5 years of age, we learn the neat trick of talking to ourselves. We realise that we can actually say something but also follow our own instructions. So we talk to ourselves out loud, and there's this stage when kids run around and they talk to themselves.
Professor Richard Bentle has devoted much of his career as an experimental clinical psychologist to challenging concepts like schizophrenia and the way we think about those who say they hear voices or express irrational beliefs.
There are huge problems with this kind of account of what madness is, and an alternative account is beginning to emerge, sort of has emerged over the last kind of 10 or 20 years, I suppose, which looks at madness as just a kind of part of normal human variation. So there are some people who have strange experiences, who behave in ways which seem to be out of the ordinary, which other people maybe see as disturbing or unacceptable. And those people, so those are the people who get called mad. But there's no sort of cut-off point between who's mad and who's not mad. There's just a sort of distribution of within the population of different types of experiences.
It sounds to me that you're saying the way we understand madness and the way we conceptualise mental illness is restrictive, is unscientific, and we need to challenge that.
One of the main downsides is it just treats these people as if a sort of different species, that we have one species of individuals who are sort of normal people, who have kind of privileged access to reality. We know what's going on in the world, we're right. And there's this other group of people who are deranged, out of touch with reality, not responsible for their actions, and people who basically need to be controlled for their own good.
Could I just ask, the voices that you hear, Are they voices that you recognise? Do they have an identity?
Yeah, sometimes I can hear up to 20, 30 voices, but sometimes it's not audible. It's like a crowd of people that's behind you and perhaps talking about you, rather, but you can't really pick the identities out of them all.
Right.
Peter Bullimore has been hearing voices for 2 decades. Today he's helping psychologist Dr. Sarah Tighe to understand what it's like to have other people's voices in your head all the time.
OK, and when you hear your voices, how long do they last?
They used to go away for a while, but since my father passed away suddenly a year ago, they've been there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
OK, so it's not that you hear the voice and it's a few seconds, it's much longer.
It's all day. As I'm talking to you now, they're still there, yeah. I think they got me to a point, they did push me to breaking point, and I basically wanted a way out, and that way out was death, really. I wanted to kill myself to get rid of the voices.
So to make them stop?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
To mainstream psychiatry, Peter is a textbook schizophrenic. He has a history of being sectioned or locked up under the Mental Health Act. But the root of the voices in Peter's brain is not far from that which inspired Sister Mary.
As I grew up and went through school, and I'm sure the same for you, I was told it's acceptable to hear voices, and so were you.
How?
Because we did religious education. Jesus spoke to God. Paul on the road to Damascus spoke to a bright light. Moses spoke to a burning bush. So we're told it's acceptable. Then when you actually do start to hear voices for some reason, and you speak out about it, we have a tendency in our society to punish people.
And so therefore people won't talk?
For the last 20 years, Peter was repeatedly hospitalised and given large doses of antipsychotic drugs. Nothing stopped the voices in his head.
Is this voice talking to you now?
Yes.
And what's it saying?
Don't tell her anything or she'll burn in hell.
I'll burn in hell?
No, I will burn in hell if I tell you anything.
OK. I can't talk to the voice, though, can I?
Possibly.
So if I said to the voice, I'm talking to Peter because I respect the work he's doing and the experiences he's having, and you need to leave us alone.
Yeah.
What's the voice saying?
I don't really want to say on camera.
Say it. No.
Fuck off.
Right. OK. So this is a voice that it's pernicious, it's there all the time, and it wants to control you.
It's not always the dominant. Well, it is the dominant voice in content, but at times when I've heard my grandfather that's passed away, and I've heard my mum, when I focus on them more than the negative, they become the dominant voice, they become positive, and I actually think they actually enhance my life a hell of a lot.
Peter has not only found a way of coping with the voices in his head, he now works with psychologists, psychiatrists and other voice hearers to help normalise what many still regard as a sign of madness.
I've actually heard my mum's voice.
Is your mum alive, Brent?
No, she's dead.
She died.
I started getting the voice around the same time as my mum died, and that was a comforting voice for me.
Right.
You know, she used to...
If we can set our prejudice to one side, we might recognise that when the external pressures are strong enough, we are all vulnerable to moments of confusion that can be wrongly interpreted as madness.
So it frightens us, but the truth is that we could all experience it.
Yes.
I mean, I had an experience not long after my father died, which was I was away in a hotel room on business. I woke up and he was sitting there.
That's very, very common.
Yes, it is common, but it also, some people would say, that's a bit mad.
How can it be mad when it is such a universal human experience? Interestingly enough, there is research on that.
But people don't talk about it really, though.
Well,
people don't want to talk about it.
Isn't that the problem? Perhaps if we just all talked about these things a bit more, perhaps they would just seem less frightening. I mean, it's interesting. There has been quite a lot of research on bereavement hallucinations, as they're sometimes called, and they usually occur in the context of there being a sort of very strong positive bond with the person who's gone. And they're usually comforting, which is how you've described your experience. And, you know, it's not a great stretch to see that the mind, when, you know, in a state of loss, wants to believe that there's still a connection with the person there.
My own experience of what might be considered a mad moment has broadened my understanding of how we should respond to experiences beyond the boundaries of scientific fact. So did talking with voice hearers like Peter Bullimore.
Yeah, I think it's about living with them, isn't it? Instead of getting rid of, you can alter the relationship.
That's right. I can't get rid of them.
Yeah. I think it's a problem psychiatry makes when it says we're going to get rid of voices.
Right, so you sort of fragment them away from the individual, but actually what you're saying is integrate them, make it part of who you are.
Have a relationship with them, understand them.
Are you mad, would you say?
No, I have been mad. I've acted mad, but I don't think I'm mad.
What would you say to people who, listening to this conversation, are thinking, he's crazy, he's nuts, he's mad.
I would say I think you need to have a reality check yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and say, who are you? Because I don't think we ever know who we really are.
And what are the voices saying to the questions I'm asking you at the moment?
They just keep saying to me, you're doing well.
So the demonic one's gone?
It's still in the background, she's still having a go, but so what?
Whether people who hear voices are hearing the voice of God or a voice from somewhere else, it's clear that the brain is susceptible to the power of persuasion from within or from without. We can accept some forms of religious belief and even respect those who believe they are in touch with God, provided they present their beliefs in a safe and predictable context. But because Britain is one of the least overtly religious societies in the world, we can find overt expressions of religious belief outside of traditional surroundings a bit embarrassing, even sometimes a little threatening.